There is something in this manuscript that Leonardo da Vinci didn't know he was leaving behind. A fingerprint, invisible to the eye, left on the paper when his hand touched it 500 years ago. Scientists believe that fingerprint might contain enough dead skin cells to extract his DNA. There is something in this manuscript that Leonardo da Vinci didn't know he was leaving behind. A fingerprint, invisible to the eye, left on the paper when his hand touched it 500 years ago. Scientists believe that fingerprint might contain enough dead skin cells to extract his DNA. They don't have Leonardo's DNA yet, but they're closer to getting it than anyone has been in 500 years. Act 1 The Genius with no tomb. Leonardo da Vinci died on May 2nd, 1519, in Amboise, France. He was 67. He spent his final years in the service of King Francis I, who admired him so much that, according to some accounts, he was present at Leonardo's deathbed. His wishes were precise. He wanted to be buried in the chapel of St. Hubert inside Bicotto, and funeral services were held at the nearby church of St. Florentin. For almost 250 years, nobody disturbed his remains. Then came the French Revolution. The church of St. Florentin was torn down, the cemetery next to it vandalised. The bones of those buried there became mixed, scattered, some lost permanently. In the 19th century, an antiquarian named Arseny Houssaye believed he identified Leonardo's remains among what was recovered. He found a skull of unusually large size and inscription fragments that could be linked to his name. Those remains were reinterred in the chapel of St. Hubert, where they remain today. The plaque says something very specific. Remains attributed to Leonardo da Vinci. Attributed, not confirmed. Nobody has ever proven those bones are really his, and without his DNA or the remains of someone to compare it to, the question has no answer. That's where the project comes in Act 2, 30 years of archives, 12,000 people. Tuscany, 30 kilometres west of Florence. This is where Leonardo was born on April 15, 1452, the illegitimate son of a notary named Ser Piero da Vinci and a woman called Caterina, about whom very little is known. Ser Piero had at least 12 acknowledged children with different wives and relationships. Leonardo was the eldest, the only illegitimate child he recognised. Alessandro Vezzosi has spent decades directing the Museo Edile Leonardo da Vinci in Vinci. Since the late 1990s, with genealogist Agnese Sabato, he set out to do something most people would have dismissed: reconstruct the complete Da Vinci family tree from the 14th century to the present. Parish records, wills, property deeds, letters, notarial documents, 3 decades of archival work in churches, town halls and private collections across Tuscany. In May 2025, they published the results. A 400-page book, Gene da Vinci, Genealogy and Genetics, for Leonardo's DNA. The tree goes from 1331, the generation of Leonardo's great-grandfather, to today. 21 generations, over 400 individuals documented, and among them, 15 living men with a direct paternal connection to Leonardo's family. 15, father to son, unbroken, for 600 years. Act 3, 15 living men when Vezzosi and Sabato found them. Some knew about their link to Leonardo, others didn't. Imagine getting a call from an art historian telling you that you are a direct patrilineal descendant of Leonardo da Vinci, and that a team of geneticists wants to analyse your Y chromosome. Some said no. Others agreed. 6 of the 15 consented to DNA analysis. David Caramelli, director of the Department of Biology at the University of Florence, led the genetic analysis. His team extracted DNA from the 6 volunteers, analysed their Y chromosomes. The Y chromosome passes from father to son with minimal changes across generations. It works like a genetic surname that moves through time almost unchanged. The 6 men shared specific Y chromosome segments. That proves they all descend, through an unbroken paternal line, from a common ancestor. A man who lived at least 500 years ago. The Y chromosome confirms the lineage is continuous and verifiable at least to the 15th century, that the tree Vesocian Sabato built over 30 years is genetically coherent. But Leonardo wasn't the father of any of the 15, he was their ancestor. What the analysis doesn't yet tell us is exactly what Leonardo's Y chromosome looked like. For that, they need his remains. Act 4, what the Dina confirms and what it doesn't in Vinci. At the Church of Santa Croce, there is a Da Vinci family tomb documented in historical archives. Several members of the family were buried there during the 14th and 15th centuries. Leonardo's brothers, uncles, cousins, people who would have shared Y chromosome traits with him. The team excavated that tomb. They found remains. Whether the Dina in those remains is sufficiently preserved is still being determined. Caramelli was careful when asked. Further detailed analyses are necessary to determine whether the Dina extracted is sufficiently preserved. Based on the results, we can proceed with analysis of Y chromosome fragments for comparison with current descendants. That was September 2025. The process is still open. And then there's the other possibility. Jesse Ausubel, the project director at Rockefeller University, raised it in Science. 21st century biology is moving the boundary between the unknowable and the unknown. A fingerprint on a manuscript contains dead skin cells, cells left by Leonardo's hand when he touched that paper 500 years ago. With current techniques for extracting degraded ancient Dina, that fingerprint might hold enough genetic material to attempt a comparison. Leonardo's manuscripts are at Windsor Castle, in Milan, at the Louvre, at the Biblioteca Nazionale d'Espa. The Codex Leicester belongs to Bill Gates. Some have visible fingerprints, none have been genetically analysed yet. The project is in talks with the custodial institutions. If they get the Dina, what could they learn? His left-handedness. Leonardo was left-handed in an era when children were forced to write with their right hand. There are genetic markers related to handedness that could be confirmed. His visual acuity. Several researchers have proposed that his ability to capture fleeting details has a biological basis. The asymmetric wing beat of a dragonfly. The smile in the Mona Lisa frozen in a fraction of a second. The cause of his death. Still unknown. And something more practical. Any biological trace on a canvas or a panel could be compared to his profile. A way of authenticating attributed works with varying degrees of certainty. The art market has a great deal riding on that question. Closing what would come next, the most documented man of the Renaissance. The most reproduced artist in history. The engineer whose notebooks remain among the most studied in the world. And yet, no confirmed tomb, no recovered Dina, no answers to things as basic as what he died of or what he looked like in genetic terms. 500 years of study. And in fundamental ways, Leonardo is still an unknown. But there are 6 living men who share Y chromosome segments with him. There's an ongoing excavation in Vinci. There are researchers looking for fingerprints on manuscripts. And the question that 30 years ago seemed definitively closed now has a different answer. Maybe yes. When Caramelli talks about the project, he mentions something he finds more important than authenticating artworks or the art market. Understanding the genes of someone whose capabilities were so extraordinary that 500 years later we have no clear equivalent. A man whose eye saw what others couldn't, whose mind connected anatomy, engineering, painting and physics when those disciplines barely had names. If any of that has a genetic basis, knowing it won't explain the genius. But it adds something to what we've spent 500 years trying to understand. Every bloodline tells the truth. When someone spends 30 years looking for it,